Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back if you have. My intention is benevolence for all, in alignment with the highest levels of love light. I've been kind of running around all day today, had a lot going on, and I just had been in a constant state of flow. So I wanted to give you guys an energy update, maybe go into a little flow, so to speak. It's been a crazy week. So the sign that kept coming up, when I drive, I get a lot of synchronicities and downloads, and the recording wasn't conducive to, or the conditions weren't conducive to me recording. I really had to focus today. Traffic was a little crazy, so I didn't record. But what I had seen was the universe just keeps sprinkling all these things in my path to show me that I'm in alignment, or to show me pay attention, or to say, yes, keep going. And what I had seen was on the back of somebody's car, embrace the chaos. Because I had been thinking about how, because everything is kind of all over the place right now. It doesn't feel as streamlined for some of us as it may have felt at one point. A lot of people are thinking, well, where do I go? What's going on? Why is everything so different? And they're waiting for things to fall back in order. And the message that I keep getting is, it ain't gonna happen. In the same way that we think it should, or in the same way that it used to be for us. For what I see is that it used to be things would ramp up and then they'd slow down, and they'd ramp up and then they'd slow down. This week, it was a little bit like me riding up. I was thinking about Laird Hamilton and how he must feel riding these 60-foot, 100-foot waves, because that's what it felt like. At moments, it felt so high and so strong that it was all I could do to feel like I needed to stay grounded, to stay anchored, to anchor into my body. There were several nights where it was completely electric. I astral traveled quite a few nights. I had many synchronicities. There were incidences of telepathy. And the word that kept coming up for me was morphogenesis, morphing, Morpheus. And there's a lot of plays on words that I proceeded to write down about that. Of course, Morpheus is beyond the matrix, right? Getting out of the matrix. Lots of things going on. I could have taken any word that was coming in and gone off into a spiral in that direction about that word, and it would have been applicable to what was going on, if that makes sense. And I share that because it's a form of multidimensionality. So I'll give a really basic thing about the telepathy before I forget, and then I'll go into the spirals in a little bit. So what happened was I had a session with someone who is not into as much of the esoteric or conversation, that I had with someone who isn't as into the esoteric as I am. And I say esoteric, whatever it is that maybe isn't as open as I am to some of these subjects. And he said, but he's wonderful. I love talking with him. And he said, oh, I had a fox run across my path today. Now, foxes aren't spotted in this area very often, if ever. And I have yet to look up if they are actually in this area or not. And I even said to him, do you think it might have been a coyote? And he said, well, it could have been a coyote. But we had a conversation about it, and I recognized that right before, it's okay, Elvis. Sorry about that, my little guy. I might have to stop it in a minute and regroup. But anyways, I had realized that right before my conversation that had led into this, I had seen a fox here. Right before he said, I saw a fox. And it wasn't just like a flash of a fox. I also heard the word fox. And then he said it. So this, I recognize also, has been happening. When I start to think back at how many times this has happened, I lose track. This is a form of telepathy. It's a form of using our third eye. It's a form of using our intuition. And had I have been so wrapped up in other things, I wouldn't have remembered or recognized that that happened. I'm sharing this with you guys frequently because I've had this happen in sessions with other light workers who have said things like, well, I'm not getting this, or there's no synchronicities happen. And I always will backtrack and try to find where that is. They might just be missing it. So had I have been very unaware, that would have happened, and I never would have put two and two together. And I even proceeded to tell him that I had seen it in my eye before he said it. And I said, start playing with that, because I like to share with other people how they can activate their intuition or whatever, or recognize that it's already happening in them. And that's kind of where I'm leading this. We're already capable of all of this. It's just a matter of us noticing it. It's all around us. The plasma is talking to us. The trees, the wind, the air, earth, the sun, but even not even as expansive as that, because that's quite expansive. Universe is speaking to us, through all of those that are around us, through synchronicities and license plates and songs, because all is source, all is the universe. So I've been seeing it in everything. And when we get these huge influxes of activations of solar wind, of Schumann resonance, and all of these waves of energy or particles that become waves, or however you want to describe it, they start to interact and commingle with one another. There becomes, it's like boom, like fireworks. And so this has been happening across the board. So it's a matter of us noticing that it's happening, recognizing it, and following that thread. So I also had some other things pop up about Fox. Now, Fox for me could mean a lot of things, but for me, it's the FOXP2 gene primarily. What it symbolizes for me, and the message for me from my universe, my guidance team, might be slightly different for somebody else. For somebody else, it could be that it's time to notice your surroundings, right? Fox are really good at camouflaging themselves, and they just observe. So that could have been a message for me to just observe my surroundings and recognize what is available, what's coming through. So there's a lot of messages that could have been about that. But if I wouldn't have recognized that, I not only recognized the power animal behind it, the significance, I recognized the significance of in my conversation. I recognized this even being brought to my awareness, and I recognized that that picture had come into my head. I brought this up before. It's like when you hear a song and it's playing in your head, and then you actually go and look the song up or follow the breadcrumbs and recognize why that song is playing in my head. And quite frequently, it represents something else. I have certain songs I hear in my head, and I know it's time to start paying attention because big things are about to happen. Sometimes I recognize that it's a friend that's passed away who's trying to just send me a little love. Sometimes I recognize it as symbolic for the energies that are going on. And this is intuition, because Source is speaking to us, through everything. Should we choose to recognize that? So that's one version. To go into the spirals and the Alice in Wonderland and the Morpheus and the morphogenating. I was hearing morphogenating. The genes are morphing again. We're going through more gene upgrades. The morphogenesis is the beginning. It's the beginning of a new stepping up of activity. It is expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding, much like the universe is doing. We are the universe, therefore we are in constant space of expansion. I drove here and I saw the sign chaos, embrace the chaos. And I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning of the video because I actually started recording when I drove and then stopped, but chaos theory, right? Everything is chaos, but there's order behind it. And I looked at everything this week in all of the messages that were coming through, and there were moments where I just had to stop and go, whoa, this is crazy, in a very Alice in Wonderland sort of way. I could follow any of these threads and they would be relevant to what's going on right now in some way, based on my ability to interpret it, or my ability to expand my consciousness enough, or raise my frequency enough, or to hold that vibration enough, calibrate, anchor, lock, and seal into what I'm seeing and experiencing, so that I can recognize that these things are happening, that there are patterns beneath the underlying chaos. And that's where sometimes if we're going through some things, it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's hard to see the patterns within the chaos. And I'm being invited to continue to kind of follow that and recognize that things are happening. What seems like I keep getting this reference to like the eye of the storm and the tornado, and everything is spinning around. And yet when we hone in and we go into coherence, when we go into we hold that coherence, instead of seeing just utter destruction around us in this visualize being inside of a tornado, we'll actually stop and see the particles, almost like Neo does in the Matrix. I'm not comparing myself in that way. I'm just sharing that if we start to look and say, oh, that's interesting that that bumper sticker was on that car because somebody just mentioned that word. Oh, and then I watched a television show about it. It really is that simple. Expand it out wherever you want it to go. It could end on that for you if you want to. Or it could be leading you down the rabbit trail to another adventure, to a more expansive place to be, to a more expansive conversation, to another opportunity that you planted in your future, in your path, as the time travelers that most of us are. That's a whole other video, right? How many times have I said that? Guys, it really is infinite. So I'm gonna go into a little flow. I feel like there was something else. So I talked about the telepathy, recognizing subtleties. So the subtleties of how spirit speaks to us. It literally is, as soon as you hone in and realize that that's what's going on, other things, you start to pick up these other things that are in the field that were maybe twinkling stars, but we didn't notice them before. Then all of a sudden we zoom out, we're honing in, right, to that one clue, but then we're zooming out and recognizing all of the other clues that link up like a bubble chart, right, like a map, to lead us, to assist us in this ascension journey together. Sleeping patterns might be disrupted again. It's constant. I keep hearing, was it Planck's constant? it is only going to continue. So play, have fun with it. Where do you want to explore? What would you like to create from here? And in connection with here, right? It doesn't have to just be all heart. It's the connection to our entire being, our entire essence, connecting up to source energy, connecting down into earth, and utilizing these bands of frequency, of gifts, essentially, that are coming in to assist us in our travel in this time, into the next time zone, tying together all times. So there's a lot of multiplying, multiplication and fractality and unification and oneness. As we see through what I'm hearing are these discrepancies. So certain things aren't adding up for a reason. That's another thing I wanted to share. I was driving by, anomalies have been happening to me where I'll look up in the sky, something was there a second ago and then it wasn't. I looked at the gas prices the other day and they were all double digits with my numbers that I see a lot of, right? Thank you, Bubbies. Good boy. Good quiet. And I went to take a picture while I was at the stoplight of this gas station sign, and I looked holding my camera up, and right here's the sign, and it was flashing on my camera, on and off, on, off, on, off, on, off. But when I stared at the stop on the sign of the gas, it wasn't, it was solid. But on my phone, on, off, on, off, on, off. I looked at the camera, at the gas pump. It never went off. I just decided to stay there. I was at a very long stoplight, pulled out my camera and I held it. Finally, I took a couple pictures. Never once did I see the sign actually do anything. The only time it did that was through my electronic device. When I looked at the picture, when I got home, there was no gas prices on there. It was blank for these two things that were flashing, but never once did it flash. I'm sharing this as something silly, and a lot of people blow this stuff off and go, that's weird. And they don't, I see it all as, all right, there's glitches in the matrix. We might be having something going on with Mercury in retrograde. Sure enough, Mercury's in retrograde. We might be having something going on with the Schumann resonance, right? We might be having some solar activity, which messes with electronics. So I could go on, but for me, it's fun. And so I'm enjoying that. All right. Little toning. As we stop categorizing what it is that we are seeing, as we stop categorizing where we are in space. I'm hearing a lot of words right now, so I'm wondering where this is going. And again, sometimes it's just about trust and not really worrying about the end result, just following the threads. As we cast aside what it is that we think we need to categorize. So they're showing me multiple plays on words here. Some of it is that we're putting us, ourselves, our experiences into a box. We're categorizing it. So for example, they want me to tie it back in with my things I was saying. I could go off into 10 different streams. So I might hear the word categorize, for example, and I might really hone in on that one word and be like, okay, so it's categorize, right? It's putting it into a category, right? And that might be as far as I get, and that might be enough for me. But I also recognize that part of what I do is I bring through these energies in the form of flowing frequency formations in schematics, in words, in cymatics, in wave frequency direction, in propulsion. And because I'm tapping into the vibration behind the word and what that is tapping into, as well as the combination of the letters and the frequency of the letters being combined. So this is a play on words, bound together I am essentially deconstructing that and taking it into 10 different threads that all lead back to the beginning, the genesis, the morphogenesis of what we're connecting into. And this becomes the way that I flow. Not everybody does this in this way. So a lot of people do though. So it's about finding our own rhythm and not categorizing from one perspective what it is we're experiencing. Oh, well, that was weird, so it must be because of this. Even though I was recognizing that there's other things going on, I also could recognize that there might be more going on than what I am, that I know in this 3D linear reality. In addition to that, what I'm seeing is cat, the number 9, and category. So I'm seeing it's a reference to what we're seeing. We see something, we put it into a box, right? And now I'm seeing reference to glory. Portishead, glory box. That's a whole other chain because I kept getting references to the word glory and Gloria, and I'll follow that later. But what's happening is the more we start to label things as being good or bad or weird or strange, then we start to want to group more things into that box that we've created. So now we group everything that's an anomaly into, we can't explain it, therefore it's just weird. Get out of the box, blow the doors off the box, and we're being guided just to be open and be like, isn't that interesting? Isn't that fun? Wow. Also, this comes with the ascension symptoms. This comes with messages from our guides. Oftentimes what I see are people that say, oh, well, this is from one star system, therefore it means this. From my perspective and the perspective of my guides, which are from many different star systems, many different Earth, versions of Earth, lifetimes, it's encompassing a frequency. It isn't necessarily just one, although it is just one, right? One ohm, but it is encompassing a frequency. So if we can't combine frequencies, if we say, well, this person's over here and this person is over there, we're still creating that imbalance. We're still creating the polarity. We're still creating the duality. And I know that the polarity and duality are not the same words. They do not hold the same vibration and they mean different things. But I think that just gives you an idea of what I'm speaking of. Obviously, we like to see things from a different perspective so we can see what we do want and what we don't want. But what I'm referring to is more of taking things and putting them into a category and holding them there. What the guides are showing me is that is not the way things work anymore. Think of water. It just flows. It fits into a container, but it can also flow out of the container and through the container if the container has holes in it. So it's basically allow things to flow. Let's try to get out of our heads and put things in, this is the way it is, or this is the way it must be. This is the only meaning. Well, that isn't right because fill in the blanks. It isn't about that anymore. It's just like, okay, well, that's your opinion. Great. That's how you see things. Great. And as I grow, my concepts about how things work change too. I might have thought 2 years ago, this is how it works. Because 2 years ago, from that perspective, that was how it worked. Or from that perspective, that's how I felt or thought that it worked. And that didn't mean that I was wrong. And that didn't mean that I was right. As we allow ourselves to flow more with the spiral, this new spiral of time takes on a new dimension. It takes on a new definition. So they're showing me also obvious play on words, defining in, ions. But when you put into something that's a definition, it's like, well, they're asking me just to kind of stay in flow. We're being invited to feel into the way of us, the waves, the way of us. For as we feel into this flow, as we feel into this united expansion, we begin to recognize the beauty in all things. We recognize the matter. We bring form into matter, matter into form, information, coming in as a matter of fact, factual, facts in all, factual existence. For the facts are changing. As we allow ourselves to stay in this frequency, in this coherence. When I say coherence, I had a picture of the 3 hairs, the rabbits that have their ears connected, which is a strange loop, right? Time. So time is morphing, so much going on that. There's a new beginning of this. It's like a reset button has been hit, and we're restarting. Therefore, time is almost like it's starting over. A little bit like Groundhog Day, but not. So a lot of the same things that I experienced 2 years ago, 3 years ago, are happening to me again. But they're totally different at the same time. So I can recognize a pattern, but I also recognize that my perspective. So this Groundhog Day essentially is coming up again to present itself, and we're recognizing while we're going through a lot of the same cycles, we're going through, let's say, for example, again, the FOXP2 gene is coming up for me again. I wrote this down a year ago. I've been having a lot of the same synchronicities with the same word patterns, which tells me that we've got things going on again in the brain and a lot of other things. But I'm seeing it from a different perspective. Not only that, it's being presented slightly different than it was before, and all of it feels much more expansive and less fearful than it was 3 years ago, because the energy is shifted for all of us from one perspective. And I'm not getting into the other perspectives, so of, 3D, 4D, 5D, all of that. I'm just sharing from what I'm experiencing. Everybody is going through their own process in their own way. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to be at this stage, but a lot of people are seeing this kind of Groundhog Day, like, I thought I was already through this. Well, yeah, but this time there's something even bigger you can get out of it, and it's being presented in a completely different light. Therefore, I am seeing it as if it's... So if these things are coming up again for us and it's something we don't want in our lives, it's a good opportunity for us to say, no, I'm not going to go there again, or I'm integrating this now, or I'm choosing to see this from a different perspective, whatever it might be. For myself, I recognize that it's part of the book, and I'm going back to fill in the blanks that I might have missed the first time around. Because for me, I'm literally writing constantly. And when I go back and I look at my notes that I wrote 2 years ago that didn't necessarily make any sense, from one perspective, I got some of it, I didn't get all of it. Now I'm seeing what a lot of it meant, and I can tie up the loose ends. And this is a representation of what a lot of people are going through and experiencing. I'm hearing a reference to Pink Floyd, that song, "Ticking away the moments that make up a dull day." Time. It's in a completely different ballpark, literally. So that's a whole other. Are we going to stay parked, or are we going to throw the ball? Are we going to play ball? If you build it, they will come. If something's coming out at you from left field, recognize that in that chaos, there is an underlying pattern. So what is it that is presenting itself? Are we paying attention? And what are we paying attention to? So one of the other big messages that is coming through, there's a little bit of, I get little little noise that gets made from things that come through from politics, or things that come through from things that I may have used to put value in or put time into. And now I see that that is not something that brings me joy. It isn't something that allows me to feel more bliss. And it isn't something that I feel in my reality I can change or make a difference in by focusing on. So as soon as I shift my direction and I allow myself to follow my breadcrumbs, my guidance team, and the messages that are coming through, I start to go into more of a flow and a better alignment with the messages that are coming through rather than being in resistance. We know we're in resistance when we're feeling a lot of pain, when we're going through or we're integrating things, and it might just be a transitionary period. We might be morphing from one body, so to speak, into another body. A lot of these things are temporary. They're not permanent, because nothing is truly permanent. So as we rely more on us, as we rely more on ourselves, we allow the information to be relayed directly from source, directly relayed into our senses. We expand our ability to sense and our sensibility. We expand out our recognition, our recognitive abilities are then fully activated as we immerse ourselves into, I'm seeing like immersion, I'm seeing immerse, I'm sure there's a lot of plays on words for this. As we allow ourselves to be immersed in the feeling of this beautiful collaboration and connection. So what they're showing me is we're just basically going in through an immersion. We're totally immersed right now. For myself, I was immersed this week in the frequencies. I had to lay down at one point. I had to literally hold on. Like, I felt like I was going to lift off, like go into lift off, blast off. And if I would have overanalyzed it and gotten into fear about it and thought, what's happening? I wonder, I'm freaking out. I wouldn't have integrated things, first of all, as quickly. I would have been in resistance of just allowing, and I wouldn't have been able to enjoy it as much. Sometimes when we go through these experiences, it doesn't feel enjoyable because it's not something we're not used to experiencing. So 3 years ago, when I started to experience these things, I did not find them enjoyable. They were highly uncomfortable. Granted, I was still doing the work in order to integrate some of the emotions, traumas, and whatever that I hadn't necessarily completed, right? However, now when that energy comes in, I'm much more relaxed about it, and I actually get excited and I have fun with it, because now I've been able to recognize what